We've all failed at some point, but what if we could reframe failure as a prerequisite for success? Not just any failure, but public failure, like embarrassing, heart-wrenching public failure, like being on the stage in front of all of you and totally forgetting your TEDx speech. Failure. Thank you for laughing. If we can reframe failure, maybe we can open our arms and accept it. My daughter just got her first F on a test. I remember those days. And she's good at everything. She's one of those kids in high school that you just hated because she didn't really study hard and would complain about this test and, oh, I did horribly, I'm gonna fail. And she was that girl who got the top grade in the class. But this time she didn't. She really did fail. Because it was her first time getting a low grade, she was mortified. The tears, the I can't live, I don't know what to do, how am I gonna show my face in class? And then I had to remind her, this is a private failure. The kids in class don't know that you failed. Talk to your teacher, let's figure it out. So when I'm talking about failure, I'm really talking about those public failures, those things in front of hundreds of people. There is a woman by the name of Elizabeth Blackwell, and she was in England in the 1800s, and she applied to medical school and was rejected 29 times. As a woman, she was not allowed to enter any of the medical schools. As she kept reapplying and getting rejected over and over again, she became the ridicule of her entire town. Imagine if back then we had social media. Imagine the memes that would be created about her, the social posts, the tweets, the nasty comments. But she faced all of that. Finally, people would tell her, you know what, you should probably pretend to be a man. What if you dressed like a man and changed your name and tried to get accepted that way? Again, ridicule and shaming her. She finally got accepted to Geneva College, Medical College in New York. But it was a joke because the men on that board thought if we accept her, they'll make her life miserable. They didn't think she would stick through it. I know a little bit about failure, myself as a mom, as a woman of color, as a corporate executive, and as an entrepreneur. Some days I feel like failure is actually my middle name. There was one period, this was my very first public failure. Back in college, I was a cheerleader. And during a big game, we put up a pyramid, which we always did. And sometimes it fell, which it did in practice. When a pyramid falls, you put it back up again. So as the pyramid started to wobble during this big game, in my mind, I thought, as soon as it comes down, we'll put it back up again. Then I woke up. I had hit my head, and I was out for 4 minutes. When I stood up, I knew who I was and kind of where I was, but everything was disoriented, and everyone started to cheer. Not one of those, oh, I'm glad she's okay cheers, but I'm glad we can get back to this game cheer. And as they helped me off, something incredible happened the next day. See, I was the only African-American cheerleader on the team, and one of the first ones in the entire school. So as I walked into classrooms and walked across campus, I was recognized as that girl, that black girl that fell, that held up the game. The incredible thing was I had the haters, but I also found those people who would support me. Some rumors kind of started spreading later that week about the only reason I was even on the team and that they let me on is because they were forced to have diversity. These rumors were started by my teammates. They also started to talk about how I didn't even have the skills and the qualifications to be a cheerleader on their team. It was humiliating. But two things happened in public humiliation in front of thousands of people. One, because it was public, aides, allies, cheerleaders were able to come to my defense and actually support me. And did you know that cheers and chanting is actually louder and spreads farther than boos? The second thing that happened was in the overwhelming pressure and humiliation, the weight of the failure actually multiplied and added weight to any success I would have after that. Like I said, that was my first failure, public failure, and there would be many following. As I graduated from college, I internshipped at the best advertising agency. I got a job. I started to do some amazing, cool things. I got married. I had kids. And at one point, I even left my job to start my own company, an international successful company. And everything kind of came crashing down. My marriage failed. My son was diagnosed with autism. My company went under, all in a matter of a week. And the women that I supported, other women entrepreneurs that were looking at me for advice on how do you raise kids and juggle entrepreneurship and do all of these things, hundreds of women looking at me for advice, and I had publicly failed them. Going back to Elizabeth Blackwell, she ended up being the first woman to receive a medical degree in the United States. She then went on to become the first woman to open up a private practice. Elizabeth also created a school, a medical school just for women. And then she pressed on, and because of her efforts, she was able to get legislature passed that women could actually attend medical school. Because of her example and her persistence, her sister then later became a doctor. Again, two things happened. Her cheerleaders were able to come to the forefront. She was able to have allies and support. Major medical figures, men, came to her assistance and helped her to launch the medical school and a second one in London. The strength and the courage that she had came from this pressure and the humiliation that she felt within her community. Once Elizabeth was actually able to pass the legislature, there were only 25 women doctors in the country. And by the time she passed away, there were over 500 from her legacy. We've often heard that fail, F-A-I-L, is the first attempt in learning. So I want to encourage you to change the mindset and the frame of reference of failure. If it's the first attempt in learning, then why can't I say that unless you have failed or learned, you cannot succeed? Oftentimes I think about the notion of failure and the notion of falling down or stumbling or even making a blatant mistake in the public eye, and knowing that there are people out there that can relate to you. So not only the opportunity for cheerleaders to come to your aid and your assistance and support you, but it also allows you to become a cheerleader in return as you see other people making those blunders and those failures. Napoleon Hill has an amazing quote that says, "Most people who have achieved their greatest success was literally one step after their most amazing and great failure. Pressure makes diamonds. The pressure in failure makes great success. So again, success as a prerequisite is an amazing thought. In the game Monopoly, there's a card that you can draw that says, do not pass go, do not collect $200. What if it was the same for success? Without that public failure, do not pass go, do not collect success. I have a little secret to tell you. Every single one of you in this room has survived your most devastating defeat. And that is worth cheering for. Thank you.